Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for coming. It's always a pleasure and an honor for me to speak in this room that still looks very familiar to me. As he said, it's like coming back home when I come to the seminary on this side of the ocean. It's always one of the steps of my trips every time. I was in Canada last week for a conference on Islamic democracy, and then so I would like to say a big thank you to the seminary for inviting me, and especially to Nick Munjian, my dear friend, whom I had the chance to work with for a few years now, and whom I frequently meet. We frequently meet all over the world in different places. So, well, I actually spent my 20 minutes saying so many thank you to so many people, but since I would like to go a bit into my topic, I would like to say one last thank you to a person that's not here with us today, but he was with me in Canada. His name is Ahmed Turner, the Honorable Ahmed Turner. He's a emeritus member of the European Parliament, and he's the one who started it all. He was here actually at Hartford Seminary in 2008 for a lecture, and he's the one who started the project I'm going to talk about to you in a few seconds. He's the one without whom I would not be here, that's for sure. And again, if he is the one who started it all, here is where it started it all. As I said, and as Nick said, I was teaching modern contemporary Islamic thought here in 2008, and Dr. Turner was on a speaking tour in the United States. So it happened to come to the seminary and taught a class in my course. I think some of you were there. It was not actually a class, it was a debate, a very lively discussion that he still remembers. And he came here presenting this survey he'd been conducted at that time. It was the early stage of a survey, the title of which was Muslim Grassroots in the West Discuss Democracy. He just came here and presented this survey, the early results of this survey, and we realized that these data had been published online only and without any comment. So our collaboration started there, and then we met, we kept in touch, and we met again, and we opened up the field a little bit. I'm going to explain you a little bit this how this survey had been conducted, and then we will try to make a point. The title of this survey, as I said, was Muslim Grassroots in the West Discuss Democracy, and the main theme was, are Islam and democracy compatible? Okay. It may look pretty general, but now I'm going to explain how it worked more or less. So, groups of 20 to 30 Muslims who live in the so-called West gathered in the last 4 or 5 years all over the world. In the first stage, as I said, in the UK and the United States. Gathered and discussed for 1 hour. At the beginning it was 2.5 hours because groups were larger. And discuss on this theme. So the coordinator, the discussant of the group, just sparked the discussion saying, are Islam and democracy compatible? And so they started speaking. One by one, there was a first round of answers in which these Muslims could not comment what others have said before, but just reply, just answer the question. And then a second round, so the format was very strict, and it was the same all over the world. The group was between 20 and 30. Okay, so small groups, the same format, in order to have the same data when we will be collecting them, to have this data really comparable one to the other. These Muslims are involved in this project. We're called lay Muslims. What do we mean with this term? We mean medical doctors, lawyers, professionals, workers, plumbers, social workers, but we tried to exclude imams and community leaders. Why? Because for a number of reasons, actually. but mainly because if in the same group the imam or spokesperson of the community or community leader was present together with some members of this community, of his own community, this might somehow influence the freedom of speech of both of them. So purposely we tried to avoid community leaders and imams. The first, as I said, the early stage of this survey conducted by the Honorable Americana had about 400 of these meetings in the United States and the UK. After we met, we opened up a little bit, and now we have been organizing groups for the last 3 years in other European countries, such as Italy, and myself, and France, Germany, Belgium, the Netherlands, and Spain, and I think that's it. We will try to publish the results of this survey. We will hopefully end up in a book in the fall of 2012, or maybe later, because I'm going to explain you that these results have to be analyzed very carefully, since we can see a clear difference of the attitude of the participants in the group organized before and during the so-called Arab Spring or Arab Awakening. But we'll be back on this. We'll be back on this later. What I would like to say is that these groups have this survey has no statistical purposes at all, no statistical value. It's just we do not aim to find somebody who speaks for Islam. Okay, since that nobody could do this, or every single Muslim could do this, so we're just trying to listen the voice of real people who speak for themselves in their own situation, in their own country, in their own real life in the so-called West. So it is interesting to see how at the beginning people were very shy, they didn't want to speak, and then we started, and sometimes the discussant didn't even need to spark more the discussion, because this train of thoughts started coming out from the minds of the participants, and it was really, really interesting how the situation went on by itself, and then we had to stop it after 1 hour. Okay, so it was very, very interesting. I would like to say a couple of things on the results, since Islam and democracy is a very wide topic, and we may say that when we speak of democracy, we have to be very careful in explaining what we mean with democracy, because it is not a concept that should be something on which all of us are supposed to agree. Or, for example, I can have an idea of democracy. We have the Greek root of the word and nothing else. And there are many different applications, many different theories and study who took place in the past and are currently going on. As I said, these groups have been organized all over the world, so in different situations, different political situations, different societies, and even the participants were very diverse. Any social level, any level of education, and they could speak in their own language, and then Dr. Kalman and myself translated it into English, so it was very, very free. And so we may imagine, we may expect that almost everything could have been said in these groups. That's not true. That's not true. Men and women, or in the Mauritius Islands, we had one group there too, or in Belgium, talking about Islam and democracy, basically 4 or 5 points can summarize their thought and what happened in these groups. For example, no Western Muslims in the discussions were against democracy in principle. Okay, nobody, not one single statement. And these statements, the sentences that the participants said during these groups, were not recorded, just not to, if they see a recorder, they may be a little bit influenced or so somehow worried, or say, what are they going to do with my words? just 2 or 3 people in the groups were handwriting them very fast. But every single statement have been written down and will be published. Okay, we'll see. Online, the results of the early stage are available. I will give you the website later. And just every single statement. And if you read the statements or the sentences without knowing where these have been pronounced, you cannot realize if these words came out of the mouth of a woman in the UK or a social worker in the US or in Germany or whatever. It is very difficult to realize this. And so, as I said, not one single statement was against democracy as a concept in principle. There were oppositions, of course, but based only on pragmatic grounds and on special situations, special situations. So, one very interesting thing that came out is that Islam is the only principle, and democracy is a technology. That's very interesting. We find it very interesting. It is a technology and not a principle. So Islam is the principle and democracy is a technology. Almost the whole discussion was about what was going on in the country of origin of the participants, the countries of origin of the participants. In Italy, in southern France and Spain, most of them were from Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Egypt. So those excluding Morocco maybe and Algeria, that was the Tunisia and Egypt were the center of the revolution at that time. So you could really feel the passion for their countries, for what was going on there. The passion for that they were aware that they had the chance to live in a time in which they could really, their opinion could really matter. They could really change something. You know, I'm thinking about that verse of the Quran that was Inna Allahu la yughayyiru ma bi qawmin hatta la yughayyiru ma fi anfusihim. God will not change anything in a country, in a community, until that community will change what is in its heart. So, and they really felt that that time, it was a time for change. You could really feel the passion, a new passion, a rejuvenated passion, a young enthusiasm, okay? And so we started talking with Dr. Tano and others. We started thinking about this. What may this teach us as European citizens of democracies, of democratic countries? They could teach us the passion for politics. Politics, not the politics of the politicians, the politics in the wide, in the etymological sense of the term. That was participation in society that we have completely lost. At least I see in Italy, but also in France, they have, youngsters barely go to vote. They do not feel, they have this kind of disenchantment. They just think that my vote counts nothing. Even if I don't go, we don't care, right? They do whatever they want. Politicians are somebody over us, so they don't really have power on them. In this case, I really felt this. I really hope that things are getting better, that they will not be disappointed after these last elections. We had the situation is so fluid that we really don't know where our donkey will lead us, as a Persian proverb would say. We decided to publish the book last year. Then, when the Arab Spring came out, the so-called Arab Awakening, I prefer the word Arab Awakening because the spring, at least in Europe, is connected with the spring of the place. The spring of Prague, 1968. So, if it should be a place, a spring of a place, should be the spring of Cairo. But it was not only Egypt. So the Arab Awakening, even going back, look to modern Islamic thought, modern awakening. Arab Awakening might be more significant. Anyway, since this phenomenon started to show up, we decided to keep on organizing groups, and now currently groups are being organized. We'll have one in Belgium next week, and we'll have another one in the Netherlands in June, and we hope one in Canada in June again, just to feel how things are changing, how these people are reacting, but again, the situation is so fluid that we cannot forecast anything. So again, and then I will finish. The results of this, as I said, there are 3 or 4 points that can be discussed. Okay, but the main picture, giving a look to the big picture, the Muslim communities in the West, or Muslims in the West, are so diverse, so diversity of their own, of their own feelings, of their own responsibilities in society. They felt, as I said, they bear responsibility towards their own countries of origin, and so connectingly to the whole world. I mean, their vote really mattered, and they couldn't even vote because they were living in Europe. So this it's a diversity of mentality, a cultural diversity, of course, and diversity of ways of thinking, and a diversity of interpreting the scriptures. Therefore, I may say it is a hermeneutical diversity. A wonderful book from Manuel Orozco from New York University came out a couple of years ago, and it was Migration is the Human Face of Globalization. I think this fits perfectly with this situation. So, what led us, our donkey, the donkey that led us through this long journey, was love for research, intellectual honesty, and the consciousness of the limits of our methodology. There were just interviews, because one chapter will be dedicated to one interviews, and these groups of this letting the words flow. Letting the words flow we are conscious of the limit of our methodology, but this was just not to have statistical work, one more statistical work. We just wanted to hear the voice of the real people who speak for themselves, and take, just as I said, the human side of these kinds of survey. And then I said, I'm not saying I'm not scholar, that it's not a scholarly work, but scholarship, to be really so. I'm not too old, but I've been around in the academic world for a while, and I see that there are some professors and scholars that think, they believe, they pretend to live in a kind of a meta world, completely disconnected from what we call the real world. And we should not hide ourselves in the shelter of academia. I think the scholarship, to be really so, should somehow, sooner or later, impact society. Otherwise, sometimes we took part in conferences, as many of you know, 2 or 3 days, a lot of work, presentations, and Q&A, and this and that, and then at the end of the 3 days, so you say, and so what? Who cares? We have to be very careful in this. And I think that this kind of work, with all the limits of this methodology, really fits in my idea that, alhamdulillah, not only my idea of scholarship, that really we should be able to interact with society. Well, we can do it every day with our students, when we teach it. Teaching is not just giving information and having them back with the papers. It is just throwing the seeds in the world, and somehow we hope that these seeds will lead us to something, so we can somehow change the world throwing these seeds. This is too ideal, that's okay, but just talking about scholarship, I think that this methodology, with all its limits, may make sense. So I would like to thank you very much for being here, and even giving a look to this wonderful audience, it comes to my mind another verse of the Quran, who says, "Law sha'a Allah laja'alakum ummatan wahidatan." If God had wanted, He would have made of everybody only one community, but He didn't want. Thank you.